All right, this is the second day of Riemann sums, and today we're going to move into midpoint and trapezoid Riemann sums. So what we found yesterday or in the previous lesson were right and left Riemann sums, and rectangles are okay, but they're not very accurate. Using the midpoint or trapezoid is an even better approximation for area beneath the curve. So we're going to start off using y equals x squared, which is our standard parabola. We're going from 0 to 10, and what I forgot to write down is that we're going to do 5 rectangles. Or when we get down to them, 5 trapezoids. So for midpoint, what we're talking about is actually doing the middle of each rectangle. So just for looking at it purposes, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. So I'm still going to make 5 rectangles, which means they're all going to be 2 wide, or width of 2. So here's my first stick. I'm going to lay it down. And even though I don't have a graph, I'm just trying to get a visual on what's going to happen here. So instead of raising up the left side of the stick or raising up the right side of the stick, I want to raise up the middle. So I'm actually interested in what happens when I plug in a 1. And then when I do the next stick right here, what I'm interested in is what happens when I plug in a 3, and then a 5, and then a 7, and a 9. Those are going to be my 5 rectangles. So I have 1, 9, 25, 49, and 81. And those are the ones that I am adding up. So 2 times 1, and 2 times 9, and 2 times 25, and 2 times 49, and squeeze this in here, 2 times 81. So adding all those up, whoops, 1, 9, 25, 49, 81 gives me a total of 330 for an area. Trapezoid is just slightly different. I don't think it's really any more complicated. It just has a grosser formula. So trapezoid formula is 1/2, and then you got to do base plus base. And what trips people out is usually when you see a trapezoid, you see it laying this way. And what we're going to do is tip the trapezoid on its side, and we're going to have it sit this way. So same formula applies, only our 2 bases are going to be these guys. This is technically our height. So our first base happens at 0. We're still a width of 2, or in this case a height of 2. But I need to know how high this side will go and how high this one will go. So I need 0 and I need 2. So plugging in a 0, I get 0. Plugging in a 2, I get 4. And the width of my trapezoid is 2. Next trapezoid is going to go from 2 to 4. Still a width of 2, start at 2, end at 4. So from 2 to 4, I got to plug in a 2, I got to plug in a 4, and I still have a width of 2 on my trapezoid. Plus 1/2, it's going to use 4 and 6. So 4 plugged in, 6 plugged in, still a width of 2. Next one's going to use 6 and 8. So 6 plugged in, 8 plugged in, still a width of 2. Last one to get plugged in is going to be 8 and 10. Still a width of 2. And now I just have to add all this up. And I get a total of 340. So trapezoid is pretty good when we get down to drawing them here and grab 2 colors if you don't have them. Trapezoid is probably the best one in order to find the area since it gets the closest to the curve. The rectangles are kind of rudimentary. You're either above or below. And the trapezoids are the ones that get really close. So use a midpoint and a trap to approximate the area of. Again, this notation just means please sum them all up. 5 rectangles or trapezoids on a space from -6 to 4. So from -6 to 4 is a space of 10. And we are going to make 5 rectangles, which means that they're all going to have a width of 2. So midpoint formula says 2 times, and what I need is the middle. So making my first stick right here, I'm going to raise the middle up until I hit the function, and then I'm going to make my rectangle. It's not going to be exact, and you and I might come up with different amounts. Mine looks like it might be about 3 or 2.5. That's what I'm going to go with. Next one, next stick goes right here. Raising it up, I'm going to land right about there. Making my rectangle, probably about 3.4, it's kind of below, or 2.4, it's below that other one. Next one, going 2, raising this up till it hits, going across, making my rectangle, it's probably about, let's say 1.6. Next one's going to look like this, raising the middle, actually in this case lowering the middle. Looks like I'm just shy of -1, we'll go with -0.9. And the next one, here's my next stick, here's the middle, making my rectangle, looks to be maybe about -2.2, let's go with that. So midpoint is one where we are definitely going to come up with different answers. just based on however you kind of see the picture or how you drew your boxes. I mean, we should end up close. It's not going to be that off, but they are definitely going to be different when you're comparing to your friend or to even my answer key. This one I got 10.4 units squared. To do the trapezoid one, 1/2, I need both my bases. So what I need to do is figure out how high the left side goes up, which looks to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and the right side looks to be a 1. And the width is still 2. Next trapezoid. And if I connected this is why trapezoid is awesome, because look how close it gets to the actual curve. Then my next one needs this side, which is 1, and this side, which is 3. Still a width of 2. This side is 3, this side happens to be 0. Still a width of 2. Whoops, 2. This side is 0, this side is negative 2. And I'm going to put the negative out front to make sure that I subtract all this. And then width is still 2. Because I want to make sure that I minus any areas that are below the x-axis. Oops, I'm going to do the same thing here. Minus half. This side is 2, this side is 3. And width of 2. So adding all of that up, I end up with, wait for it, need to minus that one. And I need to minus that one. So I end up with 6 overall for an area. The last example we have is about doing midpoint and trapezoid again on just an equation, not having a graph to do. So all we're going to really need to find is the XY chart. And I'm going to do the XY chart from 0 to 8. And it looks like we are making 8 rectangles. And so I'm just going to do some tick marks over here so I have an idea of what I'm looking at. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. And so if I'm making 8 rectangles and I'm doing midpoint, so midpoint, my first rectangle is going to be 1 wide. And now I have to figure out how high it's going to go. Unfortunately, 0 and 1 are not in the middle. They would be the ends of the stick. I need the middle value, so I actually need 0.5. So on my XY chart, if I had left myself room, I actually need to add some decimals in here. I'm going to need 0.5, 1.5, 2.5. I'm going to need all the ones in the middle. So I'm just going to start typing them on my calculator. If you remember how to make your calculator give you an XY chart, you could do that as well. So I could type in 2x plus 4, set my table to start at 0 and go up by 0.5s, and hit table and not graph. And so I could just grab out all of my values right here. So my first one being 0.5, hoping you can see this. So my first value at 0.5 is going to be 5. My next one will be 7. My next one, again, I'm doing all the middles, will be 9. So I'm going to grab all those off my screen and not also have it showing to you because I can't do 2 things at once. 9, and then the next one is actually 11. And as you can tell, they're actually going up by 2s. And I need a total of 8 of these. So right now I'm up to 5, 6, 7, and 8. Adding all of that up, I can find my area quickly. And I get a total of 96. So the only one we have left to do is midpoint. And, trapezoid. We're going to do trapezoid. And so that starts off 1/2, and if this was my stick, trapezoid makes me do the left and the right, so I need both 0 and 1. So using 0, if I plug in 0, I get a 4, plug in 1, I get 6, and they're just going up by 2s. Oops, I got off here. This is 14, 16, 18, 20. There we go. And so trapezoid makes me use both sides, so I need both 0 and 1. And I have a width of 1. For the next one, I'm going to need 1 and 2 with a width of 1. This is a lot of writing out here. Next, I'm going to need 2 and 3 with a width of 1. I'm going to need 3 and 4. I'm going to need 4 and 5. 5 and 6. 6 and 7, and 1 more. And then we're going to have to type all that in to find our area. And trapezoid is by far the best, but it does take the most time. Half times that, and we've got just typing all this in. And I ended up with 96. I sure hope that's right because that took a long time. So just doing trapezoid and midpoint. Trapezoid, making sure that you use both the left and the right hand side of the stick. Both sides have to go up. You got to find the value on each end. And watch how wide your trapezoids are. That one was 2. This one was just a 1. For midpoint, if you have a graph, it's going to be a little bit of estimating because you're taking the middle up until you think it hits. If you have an equation, you can just plug in the value in order to find the middle of each rectangle.